ladies and gentlemen, the Epic Film Guys podcast.
Halloween. The word by itself invokes something magical in people all throughout the world. It carries deep childhood nostalgia, that special time of year when people let loose and wade in the darkness and mischief, putting on different faces to celebrate the menace of an ancient 3,000-year-old holiday. To a small minority of the population, however, those that spend their nights and weekends indulging themselves in the works of horror, it means something else entirely. New movies come and go. Franchises are rebooted, remade, and sequeled, but only a small handful of them have the level of legend and fandom as Halloween. John Carpenter changed the face of horror cinema in 1978 with a film many consider one of the best ever made, and as movie fans, we're privileged enough to have a sequel to his classic film hitting theaters this October. Cinematic boogeymen are a staple of pop culture. Hey, we all love them, and this guy is the king of them all. I was lucky enough to have been able to sit down and have a chat with him. Ladies and gentlemen, it's time to meet your new Michael Myers. Welcome, James Jude Courtney. First off, James, I want to thank you for taking the time out of your day for coming on and doing this interview with me on the Epic Film Guys podcast. I really want to find out first and foremost how you got started doing stunt work and your passion of movies. Did you always have that passion growing up?
It was something that I knew I was going to do. I had these epiphanies when I was in fourth grade. For some reason, it was a monumental year for me. I'd figured out things that were kind of strange and weird, like, reincarnation. Like, where did I get that? I was raised Catholic. But I also knew that I was going to make films for a living. I mean, it wasn't like a dream. It wasn't like, I want to be, I didn't have posters in my room. I just knew, like, all of a sudden that's what I was going to do. And my dad had always, my dad had been making films, Christmas films and Easter films, and he filmed every football game. I had 6 brothers. I mean, he filmed every football game and every basketball game and every, boxing match or martial arts, whatever we did. And so, we had the camera, we had the lights, and so by 5th grade, I was making, every project that I could possibly make, history, religion class, whatever, I would make a little short film, and my mom was my cameraman, and my brothers were my actors, and we just kind of moved forward, and as far as stunts goes, it wasn't until my acting coach got me an audition for The Adventures of Conan at a live show at Universal Studios, which was an amazing, amazing show. It wasn't until then that stunts opened up to me because, I was a double swordsman and I did a high fall in that show, and it was just something I was naturally athletically predisposed to doing, and that's how I started doing the stunt stuff, and actually for a time, it was principally acting, and then it became acting stunts. Like I could do an Australian accent or a Bronx accent and get in a fight or, do a high fall or crash a car. And so I started working a lot as an actor stuntman. And then I ended up being a stunt double for one of the leads on Babylon 5. And so I ended up doing more and more stunts. But all that didn't matter because, here I was focusing on getting my films made. And it's just... it was just all a part of being in front of the camera. For me, it was all about being in front of the camera. Because if I was in front of the camera, I could see every department work and how they worked and why they worked and what didn't. And I worked on a lot of, not so good projects and some pretty excellent ones. And all of them had people who were passionate and investing everything they had in doing what they're doing. So, for me, it was always a gift and a learning process.
Were there any films that truly impacted you in your life growing up or that really scared you? And were you a horror fan growing up as a kid?
When we were kids, my dad loved films. So on Saturday nights, we would watch horror films. And the rule was we couldn't watch horror films unless we were with him. And, I'm the oldest, but I had 6 younger brothers. And that was, and The Twilight Zone and anything scary we had to watch with him. and we'd all sit on the floor, our backs against the couch, and all huddled up against my dad. And so the classical Universal films really, really impacted me. Frankenstein and Dracula and the Mummy, and they all moved me. There was one, I believe it was a Lon Chaney Jr. film. I'm sorry, it was a Boris Karloff film. It was a Boris Karloff film about the father and a family, like in Eastern Europe somewhere, and he was going off to kill these werewolves or whatever, and he told his family if he didn't come back by midnight, that if he came back afterwards, they had to kill him, and they didn't. And they all ended up being whatever these monsters were, and I can't remember the name of the film. That film scared the bejesus out of me, man. I was scared for months.
I'm going to have to find that movie now that you've mentioned it. I don't think I've seen that movie, but I'm definitely going to have to seek that one out to watch.
It was really spooky and dark. And if you look at like Frankenstein and the Mummy, I had a lot of compassion, and which I think has served me in my life, certainly. But it served me as an actor and a writer, because compassion for, empathy for feeling what other people feel, and having empathy for Frankenstein, and empathy for the Mummy. And, I got that as a kid. I got it. And so, and I had empathy for the characters in that film as well. But, that was something that was out of my control. Like there was something under the bed every freaking night, man. And it was tough.
It's got to be crazy. And now you are playing probably the most iconic cinematic boogeyman, first introduction to the Halloween franchise.
I remember it so clearly. Knowing I was going to make films, in college, the two films that really struck me were Rocky and Halloween. I walked out of both of those films, certainly Halloween, going, this is a game changer. This is different. This has been done different, and this is so different, and it's going to change the way films are made. And so, I can't even remember the date I was with. I can't remember her name. I can't even remember what she looks like. But I can remember that I walked out of that theater going, whoa, this is different.
Yeah, it's definitely the movie that impacted me the most. I remember seeing it for the first time when I was 14, staying overnight at a buddy's house, and he had it recorded off of TV on a VHS tape, and I watched it. At the age of 14, it scared the crap out of me. So it's definitely, it's a very special film to a lot of people, and that's an awesome memory to have, especially considering, you are now in those shoes of the Shape, which I got to know, is there a certain way that you personally view Michael Myers? Who is that character to you, and how do you think he's changed within the last 40 years?
I have not intellectualized Michael Myers. From the very beginning, unlike, I studied with, Ron Way was my first acting coach, was from the Royal Academy of Dramatic Art, and I actually went over to England to even, sign up for RADA or Lambda, but I got offered a film through a Maniac, so... And then I studied with Stella Adler, who's one of the iconic acting teachers.
Oh, yeah. Oh, my God. That's insane.
Yeah. And so, there's a methodology to creating character, and you create all these experiences you draw from your life, and you draw from the people but with this particular character, what I did was I volunteered for years in a thing called family constellation therapy, which was developed by a Jungian psychologist named, I can't remember his name now. Anyways, he's a Jesuit Jungian PhD. Who studied the Zulu for 20 years. And the Zulu, amongst all the people in the world, do not carry forth familial pathology, like drug addiction, alcoholism, sexual abuse, emotional abuse, physical abuse. They don't do it at the core of their society. So he studied their methodology, created family constellation therapy. So when you're in a family constellation therapy group, and you're representing, you're there to, and someone will say, will you represent my father? Will you represent my mother? Will you represent my sister? Well, they call it the morphogenetic field, and the theory is that this is an informational universe. The universe is filled with information. So anything that's ever happened, anything that's ever been said or thought of or created exists. And so what I did, because I have so much experience with family constellation therapy, what I did was I chose to just create the space that I could embody the energy that had been created by first of all, John Carpenter and Deborah Hill, and then Nick Castle. So what they created, and especially Nick, what Nick did was already there. And then it has been informed by every single person who's played Michael Myers since then. So instead of thinking about it, what I did was just embodied it. I just allowed it into me.
Oh,
and,
wow.
And dude, it was deep. It was deep. It was really deep. In fact, Jamie wrote me this beautiful little note she left in my dressing room the last day of shooting, thanking me for going so deep. to create the character. And the beauty of having done family constellation therapy is I could breathe into it. And then when I heard, check the gate, which means we're going to a new setup, I could breathe out of it and leave it alone. So I didn't carry that with me. So I never thought about it. I just did it.
That's a really interesting way of performance. I've never actually heard of this method that you're referring to, but I'm extremely intrigued by it. It sounds like the really cool way of putting on a performance. But I gotta know, a lot of fans want to know how this kind of thing happens. How did you end up getting the gig as Michael Myers? What was the audition casting process like?
I moved back to South Carolina. I was focused completely on getting my films made, my writing, and getting the deals made to make my own movies. And I'd pretty much sworn off being in front of camera, and unless a friend called me. And basically, like, if a friend calls me, wants me to do a character, wants me to heck yeah, man, I'm going to do it. I love it. I love being in front. But I was over the audition process, which I used to love. I was over the hustling process. I was in a place in my life where I didn't need to. And then I got a call from Ron Hutchinson, who's stunt coordinator, a couple of the Halloween films. And, out of the blue. I mean, literally, I'm hanging out in my living room and gives me a call and says, hey, man, what's up? And he said, well, here's the deal, man. We're doing another Halloween. And I read the script, and I told these guys that this character, the way it's written, needs a really, really deep actor and a really good stuntman. And he's like, Jimmy, there's not a lot of those guys around. And I think you're the guy. So I went down. They put me on camera. It was a very, very long interview. And, I just talked about what I've done and Buffy and my first film, Freeway Maniac, which interestingly enough was a psychopathic killer who spent time in a psych ward and was fixated on a woman and wanted to kill her. And so I went down to the interview, and dude, I wasn't even out of the parking lot, and I got a call from LA asking my availability. And I hadn't even hit the interstate, and they called me back again. I mean, it was like, and then, it was supposed to go in November. And so I was like, no, okay, so I didn't hear about it. No big deal. I wasn't attached to it. It's like, I'm focused on making my film, so I could play this character, it'd be freaking awesome. But, if it's not mine, it's not mine. And then out of the blue, I get a call in early December, and they're like, okay, you're the man. And we need to, set it up. And then David Green called me, and he wanted to talk about, character and how the shape moved. And he's like, so Jim, I have this idea where, the shape moves like a cat. And I was like, dude, so funny you say that. My cat Parsifal's sitting in my lap right now. And I had used a cat, previous cat that my ex-girlfriend and I had to inform the movement I had when I did Buffy the Vampire Slayer, when I played Der Kinderstadt. And so, we had this really wonderful conversation. Also, in that conversation, he said, hey, by the way, we've invited Nick back to do a cameo. Do you mind? And I'm like, are you kidding? Are you kidding me, man? That's freaking awesome. I get to hang out with Nick Castle, and I mean, he created this, and I'm filling those shoes, man. So, yeah. And then it just happened. And then when I showed up, man, it was like, the direction I got from David was not like move this way or move that way, it was always like I was doing it. I was in the space, I was doing it, I was in, and then we just played. Like, I would do the motion, and then David would have an idea. Hey, man, let's try this. Hey, let's try this. And let's try this. And so because I was in the space when I was doing it, I was just like an automaton. I was just moving the way the energy inside me dictated I would move. And then I just listened to camera direction. And by the way, man, all the, the cinematography, there's a certain athletic communication that happens between movement and camera.
Right.
And Paul and Stuart, who are the operators, man, they're both really good athletes, and we just locked into this athletic thing. Like, I have 6 brothers. We're all good athletes. And so, when I play basketball with my brothers, I don't need to look and see who Bill or Joe or Tim or Tom is. I know where they are. I can throw a pass behind my back because I know exactly where they're going to be. And that's the way we worked. It was like we were just so tied in, man. Whoever put that crew together, man, they got it going on, man.
The stars seem to have aligned, so I think that we're in for a really big treat.
I think so, man. I'm so honored to be a part of this. I can't even. It's beyond articulation.
We know that you and Nick shared the role within the film, and it's come out over the past few months that what he did was more of a cameo on the film. Can you tell me how much of the film is you in costume versus Nick? Is he just in it for one scene, or?
Yeah, I'm in every scene, and he's in one, maybe two scenes, and he's been very clear about that. If you've been following his cons and his interviews, he has been so gracious. Like, he is such an incredibly gracious and gifted man, and he's been like, no, Jimmy's the man, and I'm the OG shape, and so I mean, there's all that going on. And I think a lot of that was hype, and of course there was the conjecture from all the fans, and and all that stuff swirling around. But at the end of the day, like, I'm 6'3", 200, he's 5'10", $170. There's definitely a difference, and I move the way I move, and he moves the way he moves, and he's not the same age that he was when he did it.
Right. Yeah, definitely. So that was the next question. I was curious, did you do anything special to prepare for the role physically? Did you study with Nick at all, his movements, or did you talk anything about how he moved in the original, other than, that cat-like nature that you referred to a few moments ago? Did you study other performances of Michael Myers?
No. And I specifically did not want to look at anyone but Nick. That being said, in my belief system, with this morphogenetic field of, this informational universe, this universe filled with information, every single person who's played the shape between Nick and myself has informed that. So if you look at all the guys who've done, beautiful work through the years and in these various sequels, they added information to whether, but I didn't pay attention to that in terms of movement or any kind of characterization. And I didn't talk to Nick because Nick didn't show up until like the third week. So, when Nick showed up, we were just hanging out we're great friends, man. We talk on the phone all the time. I mean, it's just, but he showed up, he did his thing, and it was perfect. And we got to inhabit the same scene, which is really great. And so I feel honored to be a part of first of all, this franchise and this film. But secondly, to have, inhabited that space with Nick Castle.
Yeah, I mean, that's an amazing thing to hear. I can't wait to see the movie. I can't even tell you. I'm really holding back all my fanboy excitement right now just talking to you about it. But this franchise has a very loyal and very dedicated and very hardcore fan base. How have your interactions been with fans so far? And do you feel any pressure from that hardcore fan base?
Man, I don't feel any pressure at all. They have been wonderful. It's been insane for me to try to keep up in terms of social media. I try to connect as much as I can and have personal, conversations and it's getting to the point where it's, I don't have enough hours in the day with everything else I have going on to do it, but I am trying as much as I can. And I got to tell you, man, I had a couple of experiences when I was, because it was a closed set. So, the first time this happened to me, I was riding in a golf cart towards the set, and there's a guy who got his wife on, and she's a huge fan, and she shouldn't have been there, but he's like, hey, I want you to meet my wife. And I stood up, and she starts fanning her eyes like she's about to cry. And I'm like,
oh, wow.
I was like, what's going on? She goes, Michael Myers, Halloween. And she couldn't even get it out. I just gave her a big hug. I was like, wow, man, this is amazing. And then literally a couple of days later, I was in the hotel room, and this maid comes in, housekeeper comes in, and she's really like big, boisterous woman. And she's like, yeah, she sees I had a call sheet on the desk, and she says, Halloween. They told me Michael Myers was here, and they told me that Jamie Lee's here, but they won't tell me where they are. And I looked at her, and I went, and I really wasn't supposed to say anything to anybody, but I was like, well, I'm Michael Myers. She goes, ah, and she ran out of the room, and she comes back talking to herself. She goes, okay, be calm. Okay, be calm. Okay, be calm.
Oh my God.
And I was like, and what really hit me, man, was I get to be a part of these people's joy. Like, I get to share this joy with every single human being who's experiencing joy over this. And man, dude, does it get any better than that? I mean, F the money, man. I mean, this is like, this is a beautiful experience.
I can't even imagine how that feels. So it sounds like your reaction to the reception of the film that it's gotten so far is pretty positive. I mean, how does that feel? Because it's making waves. It's so hyped right now. It's huge.
Well, I'm not one to pay attention to like reviews, and I don't generally even go see my own films or watch my own TV shows. For me, it's about the work. It's about the moment that I get to experience. And when it's a really amazing moment like I experienced on Halloween, it's like, that's enough. That's my high. But I've gotten, like Ryan Freeman, Malik Akkad's partner, has like kept me abreast of the, of the reviews and the responses. And Jamie's been cool. Like when she told me, like, yeah, this film is freaking rocking, dude. And so I'm talking to the people who know, but I'm just getting that information secondhand. It's not like I never envisioned myself to be a star with a fan base. I don't feed off of that. What I feed off is, working really hard to make something really special that will really be good and touch people's hearts or touch their imagination or inspire them. And so for me, it's all about the work.
I know this is a really special thing for a lot of fans, so I had to ask this question. Can you describe where you were and how you felt the first time you put on the iconic mask? How did it feel to you? Was it just difficult to work in? Was another part of that question.
It was definitely a challenge to work in because, because it was form fitted to my face. And then, my face was clean shaven and then I grew a beard. And so it changed but Christopher Nelson is a freaking, special effects makeup god. The guy, I knew when I met him, when I went out to Los Angeles to have the life mask made, that this guy was just freaking through the roof creative and special. And, the time we had together working on it and creating it. And, so it was the first day we did a very complicated shot. And we're rehearsing a complicated shot, and then Chris flew in, and he comes in with this, big Halliburton, and so all of a sudden, David Green and Danny McBride and Ron Hutchinson and Malik, and everybody comes over, and he's got the mask. And so I put the mask on for the first time, and everybody in the room, it was in a side room in one of the practical locations in one of the houses. But nobody else could see, no cameras, nothing. So I put the mask on, or Chris helped me put the mask on, and everybody in the room went, whoa. And it's just and all of a sudden I felt that feeling that I knew the space that I'd created for the shape, like that space that I'd created inside my being. When I put that mask on, the space was filled. It was filled. It was like, wow. And then David, after a few moments, David goes, so Jimmy, how's it feel? And I went, it's perfect for killing, man.
Oh man. That's the best tagline ever.
It was the most amazing thing. It was wow, man.
Did you get to keep one of the masks?
I'm not allowed to say.
Oh, I'm not going to lie. I bought one of the Trick or Treat Studios replica masks that I actually have an independent artist working on repainting right now because I love the new mask a lot. A lot of fans obviously they're hardcore, the masks change in each individual film. And a lot of fans really love that new mask. And for me, it's actually my second favorite mask right next to the original mask. So that's pretty amazing. Did you happen to talk to or meet the legendary John Carpenter while you were on set?
Yes, I did. Yeah, absolutely.
What was that like?
Well, he's a salty old dog, man. He's great. But here's the funny thing. I used to play tennis. I used to play volleyball after he and Adrian split up. I used to, great old stunt coordinator and a guy I went to college with, Alex Daniels, was dating Adrienne Barbeau. And so I used to play volleyball over at the house. And so I met his son Cody one time, and I related this to John, that I'd met Cody when he was young, and I was a little kid, and I was like, so Cody, what are you going to be when you grow up? And then Cody said, I'm going to be a maker, just like my dad. And I shared that with John, and John cracked up, and it was like there was a crack in that veneer because he's a tough, salty guy, but all of a sudden this genuine sweetness just came out of him. Yes, and I used to play tennis at Rick Rosenthal's house. Oddly enough,
that's insane.
A lot. Like my girlfriend at the time, Sally, and I took tennis lessons at her house, and we hung out with him and partied with him, and so it's crazy how that circle came around. Like I was in that orbit of Halloween, and I didn't even know it at the time, you know.
Have you talked to Rick at all about your experiences on the new movie, or has he reached out to you to tell you anything? Or
No, he hasn't. And it's kind of funny because I saw that Nancy, Sally and I split up. Sally was close to them. You know, I was the boyfriend, and I saw that Nancy Stevens was making some appearances with Nick, and I was like, oh, this is going to be cool when I see her again. I haven't, and I'm a pretty low key guy, man. So I haven't reached out to them. It'll happen at this time.
your first convention appearance, from what I've been told, is the H40 event in Pasadena, California, this October. Are you looking forward to meeting the masses right before the film comes out? Is that going to be a little bit overbearing for you because there's going to be a huge long line for you? Are you excited for that?
Oh, I'm stoked for it, man. I mean, I every day I'm communicating with people, on social media. So, and dude, I love people. I mean, I had 6 younger brothers, 23 foster kids from the time they were born to the time they were, adopted. I mean, I have 36 first cousins. We are a very social family. And so I love people, and to see that, and just the experiences I've had so far. I mean, if I get to meet a person and they've got joy in their eyes, and I get to look in their eyes and experience that joy for a moment, dude, I mean, it just, like I said, it doesn't get any better than that. So, and that feeds me, the people feed me. Fandom, you're so great. I'm not interested in that. That doesn't feed me. But what feeds me is joy and happiness and inspiration. And Sean Clark is my representative, and Nick has told me about this, and Jamie's told me about this, and so I have an idea of what I'm in for, and I think it's just going to be, I'm going to have trouble sleeping at night. I think is what it is. I'm going to be so stoked at the end of the day.
I think I'm going to have a hard time sleeping after talking to you now, because I'm sitting here looking at a picture of you in costume on my wall, and it's the most insane thing ever. Not to go all fanboy on you, but I mean, a lot of fans I know are extremely excited to meet you, and I also know that the fan reception to what they've seen of your performance in just the trailers alone is insane. Have you actually had an opportunity yet to watch the final cut of the film?
No, I haven't. And as far as I know, Jamie was the only one to see it initially, like the first cut. But I'm really actually glad that I didn't. I'm really glad that I'm going to the LA premiere. Perfect time. It's just the perfect time. And, I'll be there with Malik and Ryan and Ron and David and those guys and Jamie, and it'll be the perfect time to see it. And, dude, here's the funny thing. This is what I do. So, the entire time that we shot and then the reshoots, I didn't, have one moment of anxiety or stress or doubt. I mean, it's my wheelhouse. It's what I do. It's where I live. And so for me, it was the most comfortable, beautiful thing. But going to see my own movies, dude, I'll be sweating bullets. That's where I get nervous. And even though I know it's an amazing film, and I know from everyone who I've talked to who's been a part of it and I know from, you get a sense when you're in front of camera, like the cinematography, these guys are so freaking gifted. I mean, there's so many talented people. I have a deep sense of what it is we're going to see, but still I'm going to be nervous. And I can't explain it.
Unbelievable feeling, I'm sure, especially with, like I said earlier in the conversation, this movie is one of the biggest hyped movies of the entire year right now. What I'm hearing, I have tons of friends in the studio system, right? I mean, I've been around a long time. One of the words is this might be the highest grossing horror film of all time. Wow.
I mean, that's crazy.
Yeah, and I believe last year, actually, it was the new It film actually took the record from The Exorcist, and I would not be surprised with the hype and the marketing flair that Halloween has right now if it didn't take that mantle.
Well, and the marketing flair, trust me, is taking. I mean, I didn't watch a lot. I'm not the guy. I mean, there are friends of mine who do, but I'm not the guy who. Even though I'm a filmmaker, I don't run to the monitor after I work and see what I did unless, and this happened more than a few times, David would go, Jimmy, come here, you gotta see this, man. And so first of all, being in front of the camera and listening to, seeing how the cameras are set up, knowing the motion, knowing what lenses they're using. So I had a sense of the stylized way they were shooting this film. But, then the stuff that I saw that David pretty much made me see, I get a sense of this is filmmaking at a whole level. It's a whole, other level, And it has to be, man, because there's a new generation of fans coming in who are used to a different kind of technology, right? And a different kind of filmmaking. And so it can't be the same. I mean, Ryan Turek, when he kind of put this whole thing together, I mean, he was the one who realized that the option was available, that it could happen. When he pulled everybody together, it was just amazing. It was just amazing. Because you look at the people that he pulled together, Rough House, Blumhouse, Universal, I mean, and Malik and Ryan at Trancas. I mean, the level of talent. It was a perfect confluence of 4 really big rivers.
Yeah, and I know that Ryan, he's a gigantic Halloween fan himself. I mean, literally, he's a huge horror fan. So that had to be an amazing feeling for him to actually be able to put together a brand new Halloween film.
Dude, he's got a tat of the shape on his freaking forearm, and he's gonna have another tat of the new mask. I mean, yeah, and the guy is a freaking encyclopedia of horror knowledge. I mean, he lives and breathes it, and he knows it. And, I got to hang out with his family. And his mom and dad and sister are just really super cool people, really amazing, down-to-earth, intelligent, creative people. And so his dad was telling me, the basement was filled with horror memorabilia. I mean, and he knew everything about every piece. And, so flash forward to now, here he is, a pinnacle point in making this happen.
I got to ask this question. I know you probably might not be able to answer this, but I know a lot of fans want to know, is this a one and done for you, or did you sign on for more than one Halloween movie?
Yeah, I'm not allowed to say.
I figured you wouldn't be able to. Well, thanks, James, so much again for taking the time out of your day. I know you're extremely busy right now. As of this recording, we're exactly 1 month away from the release of Halloween. So I appreciate you coming on to the Epic Film Guys podcast to talk about this movie so much with me. I'm a huge fan, and it means the world to me.
Thank you, man. I'm so stoked to be here, and I really appreciate what you're doing.
Thank you very much. And listeners out there, Halloween, the sequel to John Carpenter's original 1978 classic, hits theaters October 19th. Be there in theaters. And I wanted to give a special shout out and thank you to my good buddy, Jeremy Todd Morehead, who is the biggest Halloween fan that I know. He's the one that kind of put this whole thing together. So without you, Jeremy, this interview could not have happened. The Epic Film Guys salute you.